Let's do it. Leo, you ready? All right. Zag the Mishnah, new Mishnah. Keitzad Oisel. We're going to learn two Mishnahs today, actually. How does he do it to her? What does he do to her? How is it done? When the husband suspects, so let's say that, fast forward from the previous Mishnah, we learned that the woman had the correct amount of kinoya and stira, whatever it is. He warned her not to seclude herself with the guy, and then she hid, and then he has to deal with the problem because she was in a room alone with a guy and doesn't know what to. He doesn't know what happened in there. So how does he do it to her? Malicha, the Beis Din Shavaisim Makim. First, he goes to the Beis Din that's in that place, right? Every city, every town is supposed to have a Beis Din. So he goes to his local Beis Din, and to the large Beis Din in his town, whatever it was, his discussion among the commentaries I heard about. But anyway, he goes to she goes to that Beis Din, and and they give him Shnei Talmidei Chachamim, two Torah scholars, or learned people, or not suspected people, we'll see in a minute, that will take him and her to Yerushalayim. So they're going to send the wife and the husband's going to go on the journey, and they're going to add the Tanna Kama, the first opinion. And our Mishnah says that they're going to send two Talmidei Chachamim to escort them on their journey from the local city, the local Beis Din, to Yerushalayim. Why? Why you need two people to go along, to tag along? In case they will have intimacy along the way. So we need to have two people to go along. Now, what does that help? So the Gemara is going to have a debate between two reasons. You're going to see right now. One opinion is going to be that they should never be yichud, should never be alone, right? And we're going to learn some of the details of yichud, which I'll share in a minute. And another opinion is going to be that it's actually a fascinating class. I think we're going to learn about yichud, even with one's husband and wife. We're going to learn about when they're not allowed to be together. But and the other opinion is going to be is that the two Talmidei Chachamim are there to warn her and him that they're not allowed to be together, and to testify if they are together to the Beis Din that they come to, that the husband and wife are together, and therefore the water won't work, and therefore not to give it to water to drink. But those are two options we'll see in the Gemara. But the bottom line is the first opinion of the Mishnah holds that you need to have them escorted. The Beis Din will arrange, you'll have them escorted by two people. Rabbi Yehuda, now we have a second opinion than the Tanna Kama than the first opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the husband believes on her, and you don't have to send two people along for the journey. Send the husband and wife. You're not suspecting anything's going to happen. It's an interesting debate between our Mishnah. So the bottom line is the Mishnah is continuing like with the story of the Saita, and the story is what do you do with it? You go to the Beis Din. Beis Din gets decides, yes, we hear what happened. It's the correct amount of information that we do need to send it to Yerushalayim. They determine that, and then they send the husband and wife together with two Talmidei Chachamim according to the first opinion. If this is no, I don't think you need two people with it. The husband and wife are believed on their own to go.
It doesn't say here anywhere Yerushalayim, but I guess from the fact that it says emotionally Talmidei Chachamim.
Yeah, we're going to learn soon. It has to be it's only in the not even Yerushalayim. It's only the Beis Din, like the Sanhedrin, the main. Not even in the Temple Mount, there's two other Beis Dins of 23 people there. I believe that could also pass Kedin Nefash as capital cases, but it's going to have to be. You'll see. We're going to see some of the Gemara. You're going to see. We're going to come to all this stuff. We're going to.
The Mishnah itself doesn't say any of that. The Mishnah itself just says on the way. It doesn't say Yerushalayim anywhere, right?
Correct. You're going to see it soon. Right.
Gotcha.
They tell her on the way. You're going to see it. It's going to be obvious soon. So the Gemara says today too. The Ihu and the husband. So if you're sending two, you have two plus the husband. Hatlas. So now it comes out a total of three. Because you have now three men traveling along together with the woman. So the Gemara writer wants to say Lema, let us say that this, because a lot of times we find the Mishnah and there's a debate somewhere else. The Mishnah seems to prove something else from another Gemara, from another story. So Lema, Misiyele Rav, let us say, Misiyele, that this helps Rav, another teaching that we're taught in the name of Rav. What do you mean? Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav about the laws of Yichud. So now what are the laws of Yichud? I'm just going to share. I heard from Rabbi Zions's class that there's basically 3 prohibitions of Yichud. You just went down the history real quick. It's interesting. There's a Yichud, which means a man is not allowed to be, a Jew is not allowed to be with a Gentile woman alone in a room on their own, secluded. That is the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel that prohibited the idea of Yichud with a goy, with a non-Jew. Going back even earlier, there's a prohibition for 2 Jews to be together, even if they're not married. A guy and a single girl are not allowed to be together, from a story of David HaMelech, where his son and his daughter, Amnon and Tamar, that he ended up raping her when he was alone in the room with her, and he decided from then on that single boys and single girls, even though they're not married, they're not allowed to be together. And then going back even earlier, and it's debatable, I think, if it's from the Torah or from the Chachamim, it's a debate, with a man and a woman that are prohibited to be with each other. So a guy with a married woman, so each stage is more severe. Like more recent is they prohibited a goy and a yid. Going back earlier, by David HaMelech's time, they prohibited 2 people that are single. And going back even earlier to the times of either the Torah, perhaps, or from the Chachamim, about 2 people that are prohibited, that are erva, arayos, that are not allowed to be together. So maybe two relatives that are not allowed to be together. You'd say brother and sister, or a married man and a married woman that are married to 2 different people, they're not allowed to be together. It goes all the way back to there. So the question becomes, well, how many people are needed in order to break up Yichud? 2 people, 3 people, like what are the halachas? So here, we're going to learn about it over here. So he says, let us say that our Mishnah just now, that's ending up sending her with 2 Talmidei Chachamim, which means it's 2 plus the husband, which is 3. Let's help what Rav said. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav said, that where is it enough to have 2 people escort a woman when they're in the city? Because in the city, I think there's like fences right nearby, and if somebody needs to go to the bathroom, they leave alone the guy. One of the guys went to the bathroom, use the bathroom, but it's right around the corner, it's right behind the fence, and they left the guy alone with the girl. Now that nothing's going to happen, even though it's two people, a boy and a girl, because the other guy went to the bathroom, is behind the fence. He could come in a second, so nothing's going to happen. But when you're going in a journey, in a long route, and the guy might have to go to the bathroom, it's not in a city. In order to go private, he's going to need to go to distance. This means he's going to leave alone the other person. So therefore, ad iko shleisha, you need to make sure there's three men along with this journey with this single woman, because when one of them has to go to the bathroom, you can't leave a guy alone with her. So therefore, you need to have 2 people remaining alone. So if you're going on a long journey, if you're traveling from the city to Shalayim, for example, you need to have 3 people. Shema yitztarach, and he explains the reason. This is what Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Shema maybe yitztarach echad mehen, in the cover of one of them will have to go to the bathroom. It's going to find out if there's only 2 people. Erva is doing yichud, is being in a private alone time for a while till the guy gets back with an erva, with a prohibited, which might even be either prohibited from the Chacham or might even be prohibited from the Torah. He's now with her alone, and therefore, so let us say that our Mishnah seems to hold like that statement and that discussion in the other Gemara that Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, that when you're traveling on a far distance, out of the city travel, you need 3 men with you. Seems very much that our Mishnah, even though it's talking about the laws of Saita, says send the husband with 2 witnesses to get with Talmidei Chachamim. Seems to be that it follows that logic. Probably that's why you need the people. So that is reason 1 in the Gemara for the Tanakhama's reason of why you need 3 people. Like Gemara says, no. It could be a different reason that you need 2 people. Hacha in the time here, the reason is ki so in a way, the lehevi alayhu sati, that these 2 people should be Sahadi, there should be witnesses. So I believe, I'm just Rashi, what's the reason that they need to be witnesses? That if the husband and wife were together, they had intimacy on the way to the water checking them, and we don't want them, we know the water is not going to work if the husband and wife are intimate. So you're sending two people, nothing to do with yichud. You need to have two people together to testify to the new bezdin. I was on the way. We're witnesses that we saw the husband and wife were together. And that's why you're sending two people with him. So don't bring our Mishnah in Saita to prove a halacha of Rav in yichud. No, the reason you need two people here has nothing to do with your reason of yichud. It's because we need witnesses, a specific rule together with the laws of a Saita. We need to have witnesses to know if the husband and wife were together on the way. Then he goes on to say, the second thing it said, it also says Talmidei Chachamim, right? It says if they were Torah scholars, it doesn't say send two regular people. It says specifically sending two Torah scholars in, which is good, which indicated Kuli Alma, which is not Torah scholars law. You can't send two. That also implies something. What does that imply? That might also imply something. Why can't you have two regular people be witnesses, or two regular people? Make sure there's no yichud there. Maybe this is also assisting another point that Rav made. Again, we're trying to use a Mishnah to prove a point Rav made. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, that Rav Yehuda again said in the name of Rav. He said his rule when he spoke about yichud that we just spoke about before there. Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav, that yichud, that you need three men to travel on the way. He also was very strict with yichud, obviously. He said that even those three people you send must be shaden, they must be trustworthy people. But if they were, even though you sent three people, if they were immodest, immoral, it's not going to help you. Immodest people, even if you had 10, it's not going to prevent the problems what yichud is trying to prevent. And he says, mice, and there was a story. That was, and they took a woman out in a bed. They pretended like she was dead. They wanted to sin with her. And there was a whole 10 guys, a million of guys that faked this woman being in a deathbed. And they took her out in order and to sin with her outside. So in other words, the whole protection of yichud, Rav said over there also, is only a case where these are not people that they're suspected to do this kind of stuff. So let us say our Mishnah also agrees with that statement. Why? Because our Mishnah said they need to be Talmidei Chachamim. It says those two people you're sending need to be Talmidei Chachamim. So maybe it also proves, not just that the opinion of the Gemara first wanted to prove that it's proving Rav's whole theory of yichud, that in addition needs to be people, it's also proving that it's important that the people that are there are trustworthy people. So the Gemara says, well, no, don't, again, it says, this disagrees again. It says, don't bring proof from our Mishnah to Rav that it needs to be trustworthy people. Here the reason is, an interesting reason. Again, the reason Talmidei Chachamim has to do with Saita, not with yichud of another case. The Yadi Lasriye, they should know how to do Hasra, how to warn her. Why are we sending these two people? Again, according to the second opinion of the Gemara, why are we sending these two people? Not because of yichud. We're sending them because we want them to testify that you shouldn't drink the water. But you know what else? Why we're sending them? He's saying another reason why we're sending two witnesses. Because we want the witnesses to, before you do an Aveira, there needs to be a warning. And why do you want a warning? Because you want to try to prevent the person from doing the sin. So they're actually, if they're sending two people, not just to testify to the bezdin that they sin, but to actually warn them that if you sin, it's prohibited for the husband and wife to be together, number one. Number two, if you sin, the water's not going to work. If you're going to send any old people, their warning might not be as good as if you send Torah scholars who will know how to warn and know how to get them. In other words, the goal of these two people are to prevent the sin from happening. And that's why they need to be Talmidei Chachamim, not because yichud, the prohibition of man and wife together, need to be respectable people that you could trust. No, it's because you don't bring proof from our mission. The reason they need to be Talmidei Chachamim is so that they should know how to warn them to prevent them from sin. And that is again the end of kind of that discussion of our Mishnah. So the Mishnah so far started to talk about what happens once they go to the local bezdin, the local court, and then we said they send them with two people who Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara first wanted to prove that perhaps both of these are assistants to prove Rav's opinion that yichud needs three people in the way they need to be Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara answered no. It's talking about it specifically to do with Saita, that we need two people to be two witnesses there, and warn her also to make sure they don't sit, and that's what they need between the chacham. Like the Gemara goes on. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Bailach," and the Mishnah went on to say that the husband is Rabbi Yehuda disagreed. We're just sharing now the first opinion in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, "I don't agree. I disagree with you. I hold," he says, that that we trust the husband. We don't need to rely. We don't need to send people. The husband's believed. So the Gemara says, "Baila neman v'kavachemer." Why do we trust the husband? A very interesting logic inference over here. From a kavachemer, from a logical inference, we could determine that the husband could be trusted. It's basically, why does Rabbi Yehuda say we should trust the husband? The husband that he won't cheat with the wife. This is what he means. It's a kavachemer. Manida, just like a husband and wife, it's severe, it's karis, it's a severe shehiba karis. The punishment is with excursion. If God forbid, husband and wife are intimate with each other when the woman is in her state of nida, which happens often in a married person's life. Baila neman Allah, the husband is trustworthy on her that he's not going to sin with her. We don't have people in their bedrooms, have witnesses, and so on to protect. I mean, that's you're living. You're sleeping in the same room as a very severe sin. And over there, and that's karis, for heaven's sake, that you're going to give him for being with her. If that doesn't require witnesses, kal v'chaymer, for sure not. This is not a case of karis if the husband and wife are together after she's a suspected adulteress. Saita shiva lav, saita, which is just a lav, it's a negative commandment, it's prohibition, like kol shekain. Shouldn't that for sure be the case that the husband shouldn't eat? Why all of a sudden, if we didn't suspect the whole time when the woman was needed, the husband, we trusted him, why all of a sudden here are we not trusting him? We should trust him. That's a simple logical inference to his case. Why he's all of a sudden, why over here do you need witnesses? So what are the Chachamim going to say? The rabbis, the first opinion of the majority opinion, why are they saying that they need witnesses? Rabbi Yehuda is saying a very good logic, that you don't require it for nida. So the Chacham say here in Eisenes, that is the reason. The logic you use to explain logical inference from nida to saita, that's actually work. We think it means the opposite. Nida, the karis, since nida, the husband knows he's going to get karis if he sleeps with his wife while she's in a state of nida. It's very scary. Chamirale, it's chamer to him. It's no games allowed. And therefore we trust men and women, husband and wife, that they're not going to have intimacy during that time because they know how bad it is. But say to the lav, the site is just a negative commandment. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs of prohibition. Whatever lav, it's a prohibition. It's not so important to him, and therefore he's not believed. So he's explaining now the debate, because we remember our Mishnah said it's a debate between the rabbis and the Tanakama, which is the Chachamim, and Rabbi Yehuda. But why? What are they arguing in? And now, according to our Gemara, we have a very interesting debate between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. What's your reason for arguing? So we said Rabbi Yehuda says, if we trust a woman and man when the woman's nida, that it's very bad, we still trust him. Why should we should trust him here? And the Chachamim say the opposite. The reason why a husband and wife are trustworthy there is because it's a very bad thing if they're not going to sin. But over here, that it's not such a severe punishment, they're going to maybe sin, and that's why we need to send witnesses together with them. And that is a little bit of the reasoning behind the debate between Rabbi and Rabbi. Gemara now questions that last statement. Oh, interesting. That's what you're telling me is the reason Rabbi Yehuda, Kal V'chaymer, from a logical inference, Maisila, you're telling me that is how he learned. You're saying that's Rabbi Yehuda's basis for his debate between the Chachamim, because he's saying if nida is allowed, without having people there, for sure, sight is allowed. But Rabbi Yehuda Mikrai Maisila. Rabbi Yehuda, we know, actually sources his opinion from a verse, not from a logical inference, from a much stronger place, from a pasuk. He actually has a pasuk that he holds backs up his opinion. Where do we see that Rabbi Yehuda uses an opinion? The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa. So Tanya is a brisa. A brisa is a later Mishnah, a little bit later on Mishnah, which sometimes gives you more information. So we have a brisa that tells us that Rabbi Yehuda's reason is from a pasuk, and he's going to quote you now a whole long brisa. It's going to be about 10 lines, and at the end of the brisa, we'll see Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and he's going to share the Tanya into the brisa. The brisa says, man, it talks about most of the same stuff, with a little nuance difference than our current Mishnah. And it says, and the brisa quotes, the man brings his wife to the kohen. Minat Torah, from the Torah, ha'ish mevi es ishtoi, that the man brings his wife. So the Torah says the man should bring his wife to the thing, and I think it's already clear over here. The Torah says the man brings his wife, so that's the system that it clearly says in the Torah. The Torah trusts the man to bring his wife. Let's go on. But so the Torah is the one that took the responsibility almost, or that said the system is that the husband brings his wife. It says it in the Torah. The husband brings his wife to the thing. So why? I guess it really says it's why are you adding that we need more people here? We're just following the order the Torah said. But the rabbi said no. We gotta add. I know that Torah said that, but we need to add to the mikacham. We're concerned. I know the Torah is the one who set up that the husband should bring the wife. Because maybe he'll be intimate with her along the way, and therefore we need to say to. I guess as we learned earlier, we learned either you could say it means that they need to tell us later on what happened, the bad thing that they were together if the water won't work, or also to prevent them from being together. So Rabbi Yossi Omer, and then Rabbi Yossi said the reason that we will trust the husband from a logical inference, and he uses the same logic. This price that brings the same logic we brought before. Just like a nida gets punished bikaris, baila neman alaha, and the husband's trustworthy not to be with his wife. Saita she belabs, so for sure saita, which is just a prohibition, like Kolshakin should be for sure not trust him. Amrulai. So they said back, Loi, no. Again, the Brisa here is quoting this whole logic that we kind of spoke about already, a lot of it. And he says, no, but he says a different reason to break, a very interesting reason to break up the Kal V'chomer. Before the Gemara said, we tried to say, the Chachamim said, spin it around, that the reason why we don't suspect a Nida is because it's much more severe. It says something else, a very interesting, different logic, how to break up the Kal V'chomer, the logical inference. It says, even Marta Benida, by a nida, you want to know why we don't think the husband and wife will do a sin when she's nida, because the woman will eventually become permitted to her husband. So he says, okay, I'll wait a couple days, I'll wait another week, and I'll have what I want. And therefore, we don't suspect that anything's going to happen. How could you compare that to Saita? Can you say that by Saita? It's very possible she's going to drink the water, and we'll never be able to be with her again after that. Therefore, Saita is not the same like Nida, even though Nida is much more strict because it's Karis. But Nida, I guess also, right, Nida, the husband and wife will be together again very soon. It's according to simple logic. Therefore, it just has to wait another couple of days. By the case of a Saita, for all he knows, this is his last chance. And therefore, the Yetzer Hara, it's much stronger. But Omer, it says in the verse, Mayim Genuvim, stolen waters, Yimtaku are sweet. So whenever you're told no in life, that's where the Yetzer Hara is very strong. So at least by the Nida, it's not a no, it's just wait. But by here, it's a no. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, therefore they knock off Rabbi Yossi's Kal V'chomer. You cannot say if Nida doesn't need people there to protect them from having intimacy, for sure Saita should, because Saita is much more severe because he's never going to be allowed to, in his mind, he thinks it's very possible I'll never be with her again. This is my last chance. So we have to send witnesses together with him to make sure nothing happens. And here is where the end of that interesting brisa ends. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mina Torah, my reason why you don't need witnesses is because that is the way the Torah terms it. It's from the Torah. Ish mevi es ishtoi el hakoyin. The the man brings his wife to the kohen. Torah is the one who set up the standard, and Torah said that the husband should be trusting the husband to bring his wife to the kohen. Torah wouldn't have said, I guess, bring your wife to the kohen if the Torah thought that bad things are going to happen along the way. They say, have someone else bring the woman to the kohen. Shnei maybe it's the shishtai because it says, a man should bring his wife to the kohen. That's it, and therefore, and that ends. We're going to show one more piece of Gemara here before the next mission starts, but that is basically the first stickle Gemara. That's the end of it, basically, that Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the Chachamim, and Rabbi Yehuda says he makes a kavachaymer or he makes a pasuk, one of the two. The Brisa said he learns it out from a pasuk, and he says that the husband is trusted to bring his wife to the kohen, either a kavachaymer from nida or from the way the pasuk terms it. Bottom line is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, doesn't need to send things. So now the Gemara just finishes. Amalu kavachaymer b'reisha. Kavachaymer b'reisha. This is first. They make a kavachaymer in the beginning, right? Uparchua, and then they knocked off the kavachaymer. Hadar amalu kra, and then he brought a pasuk. So that's what happened. First, they said make a logical inference, and then they said, well, you can't make a logical inference. And the Brisa said an interesting reason. Why can't you make a logical inference? Because it's different. Because nida, they will be allowed to be together, and here not different. You can't learn out from Yosef's kavachaymer. So Yehuda says, I'll share with you a pasuk, and that's it. The Torah says the husband brings his wife, and that's enough reason for us to believe that the husband doesn't need two other people there. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, Hainu Tanakama. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda is the same as the Tanakama. I guess the Rabbi Yehuda at the end of the Brisa, right? This long Brisa we brought, Rabbi Yehuda said at the end, we'll learn out from the Torah. But the beginning of the Brisa, that's exactly what we said. We said at the beginning of the Brisa, we said that it says a pasuk, so they seem the same. What's the difference between the beginning of the Brisa and the end? The difference is that I guess at the beginning, the Brisa started off bringing a verse, but the Brisa said, even though we know there's a verse, the Chachamim still wanted you to bring to the Chachamim said, we know about the verse, but even though the verse says we trust the husband, we're still adding two people because we're concerned. We don't trust anymore, whatever. We need still two people to go along. And Rabbi Yehuda ended up saying no. Rabbi Yehuda ended up saying no. The verse says it's okay. That's it. We're going to stick with that. And we don't need any two people to go along. And that's the end of the story. You guys with me so far? We'll go on to another mission. Yeah.
Can we go over that last stuck of Gemara just for a second? The Omer Lahu.
Yeah.
I was following up until there. Kavachaymer b'reisha parchuha, right? Can we just go over that real quick?
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, middle of a class. Hopefully you'll be sleeping because the macking's done for a while. Okay, let's go. Yeah, so he says, let's go back again. He says like this, Amar lahu kavachaymer b'reisha. So first, they make a kavachaymer, uparchua, and then they break the kavachaymer. V'hadar amar lahu kra, and then he says a pasuk. So he's made a kavachaymer, then he broke it off, and then he says a pasuk. Right? That was the order. Okay. That's it. That's what happened.
Okay.
Rabbi Yehuda, the problem that what it has is Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda is the Tanakama. What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda is disciplined himself. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, I'm making my mask over now. Mina Torah ish maybe it's ish elakayin, that the Torah says the husband brings the wife. But if you go to the beginning of that brisa, where's the beginning of the brisa? It was all the way back here. The beginning of the brisa, that's exactly how it started. The Tanya says in a brisa, the first opinion, the Havia ish is ish elakayin, Mina Torah. The ish maybe it's ish that it's from the Torah. That in other words, whatever Rabbi Yehuda said after they knocked off the kavachaymer, that's exactly the same opinion as how the brisa started. It says it right here. We learned the man brings his wife to the kohen from the Torah, and because that's what it says in the Torah, that the man brings his wife. So why it doesn't need? Why, in other words, before you said the whole kavachaymer thing, we already brought a pasuk. So the Gemara says no. The Gemara answers the difference is that what did we say right after the first opinion said? It says in the Torah the husband brings the wife. It said Avo Amru Chachamim, but the Chachamim added. In other words, even though it brought the verse, it then went on to add, but the Chachamim say, "Oh, I see that I am still recording the whole time. It's fine. I thought I stopped the recording, but I see that I just stopped the sharing. So let me. Okay. What? I was sharing the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay, but did you get what I just said? In other words, that the beginning of the Brisa brought the pasuk. Then we got it, and then we added. The Chachamim said that you should still have two people go along, and then we brought the Svara of Rabbi Yossi that there should be a Kal V'Chaimer, and we knocked off Rabbi Yossi's Svara of a Kal V'Chaimer, and then Rabbi Yehuda said the pasuk is it, and that's it. The pasuk says no man brings his wife, and you don't need any two witnesses. The Gemara asks, what's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda at the end and the first opinion as the Brisa started off? They're both saying it's from a pasuk. The difference is that as the Brisa started off bringing a pasuk, it then went on to say even that first person who brought the opinion said, but the rabbis hold. In other words, they kind of agreed that even though the Torah said that the husband brings the wife, they said, well, we still add two people because the Chachamim are concerned. And Rabbi Yehuda, if I understand this correctly, is saying no. If the Torah says the husband brings his wife, there's nothing to be concerned about. That is what we do, and that's what we stick with. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's go weiter. What?
Yeah, thank you. I'm good. Give me 30 seconds, but keep going. I'll be right back.
Okay. I can stop. I can pause it. Like not exactly like that. Let's continue. I think also just to add one more thing, I just looked at Rashi when I had to pause it for a moment. It seems like the Rabbi Yehuda of our Mishnah is the same as the Tanna Kama of the Brisa. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda who finished our Mishnah and the Tanna Kama of the Brisa is the same opinion. And then the Gemara says they're not because the Tanna Kama of a Brisa is exactly what I explained. Says we know of the pasuk, but the rabbis added it. It's a little bit different. Anyway, let's continue along. So what happened next? Mirashi asked me where I got this from. It's the first words of the next Mishnah. They brought her up to the Bezdin Agadol, to the Supreme Court, to the Sanhedrin, to the Great Bezdin in Yerushalayim. That was in Yerushalayim. There's a special Bezdin. I believe it's that in one of the rooms that were touching almost to the inside of the base of Mikdash, and one side of the room was going to the outside. That's where the head Bezdin of the Jewish people sat, and that's where it was. And they would also they would like scare her. They would intimidate her. The same way we intimidate al eidin nefashis, some people that are testifying against people who are capital punishment. Because listen, when you testify, you're part of a case where there's a monetary issue. If you lie, you can make it up. You can pay back the people you owe. But if you've testified falsely on a capital punishment case, there's no return. You can never fix that problem. So therefore, they would, I guess, intimidate witnesses, really scare witnesses that were involved in capital punishments. Like God forbid, they shouldn't warn them. They shouldn't be saying anything not true. And they would do the same thing to this woman about drinking the water. We'll see in a minute. The Gemara is going to explain in a little bit that they were very scared. First of all, one thing is they didn't want her to drink and die, if it was true, because if there was no warning or witnesses that saw her cheat and she admitted it, she wouldn't drink. She would just not be able to stay married to her husband. They'd much rather her admit it. So they put all the pressure they could, intimidation to get her to admit it. But once Hashem's name was erased and they didn't want that to be in vain, then they would encourage her to drink it. In other words, you'll see soon. But the bottom line is they would really intimidate her. They would say, and they would try to calm her into admitting it by saying, look, don't be embarrassed. I think one of the things I heard Rabbi Zayin say in the shir is they would also make the husband out there because it could move the husband away because it could be she'll be embarrassed to admit it in front of her husband. So they wanted to create a scenario which she'll admit it. So either first, one way is intimidate her. Another way is they would say, Biti, my daughter, Harba Yayin, you say, this wine does this to you. You could be drunk. It happens to people. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. I know you're terribly embarrassed of what happened, but wine does it. You don't have to be so embarrassed. It happened. It's common. It happens to people, and get her to admit that way. A lot of things that frivolous behavior does, and it happens. In other words, again, it happens to people. Just admit it. A lot of things happens to young girls, the young people. There's the hormones and the stages, and look, it's nothing to be embarrassed of. It happens. Harbe I don't know if it's not to be embarrassed of, but it's nothing to, it happens and you should admit it. A lot of bad things happen with neighbors, neighbor sees a girl next door and they want to, there are those praise out there, and therefore it's, don't be embarrassed. This happens, and just admit it. Asay and do asi, please do it. Admit it. L'shmai hagado, to the great name, the God's great name. Shenichtu b'kedusha, that's written in holiness, that they would shouldn't be erased, because they would erase the 4th chapter of the Torah over there, erase the whole thing into ink and making a piece of Torah of the Torah being written into the potion. Alamayim, on the water. That's so again, we have intimidation. We have, kind of telling her not to be embarrassed, because this is what happens. Another way to commit. And you also say before, which really are not befitting to hear them. He, her, and her whole family. It's not befitting to hear. What does it mean? Things that are not befitting to hear. Because the Gemara is going to explain that they would tell her, "You're not the only one who, great people sinned." Yehuda and Tamar with his daughter-in-law. That there was a harlot on the street. Or Ruvain. Now the truth is that they didn't really sin, as we know the simple reading in Torah, it seems like that, but we know in tradition, as the oral Torah is passed down, that there was that he was forced into a Yehuda, whatever, that God forbid these great tzaddikim didn't sin, but you read the story in a way like they did sin. That's what it means. You read it that they shouldn't really hear. In other words, you're not reading it correctly, because the correct way with the old tradition is these people never really sinned. But you read it to her in a way that they did sin, because you wanted to say, listen, admit what you did. You won't be the first one, you won't be the last one. Even great tzaddikim have such stories. So Imam, right, if after all that, you're trying to get her to admit it to Mayani, she says, listen, you're right, I'm impure. Then what happens to her? Nothing. They write the receipt to the ksuba, the eitzais, and she goes free. She's not married to her husband anymore. Which means what's a receipt to a ksuba? So if someone has a bill that someone owes somebody else money, whenever you pay back, you better get, either you rip up that original contract, or at least have a receipt saying that it was paid up, so the person can't keep on collecting from you. So in a ksuba, it says that the husband owes the wife money if they get divorced. But here, it's the reason they're getting divorced is because she cheated. So they write a receipt saying that he doesn't owe her the money. That's if she says she's tummy. And she moves on, and she doesn't get killed because there's no witnesses to it. She's self-admitted. She actually doesn't die. The easy way out. And if she says, I'm pure, she says, no, I am pure. It's not true. Then Mailan, you go to the next step. Mailan, you take her up to the eastern gate. So you go up through the main entrance of the one of the main entrances as on the eastern side of the Temple Mount, Shal Pesach Shar Nikanor, which leads up to the door of Nikanor. Rashi brings you the story here that there was a guy who wanted to donate the doors to the temple, and he went and he built these two huge, massive, beautiful copper doors. And as he was coming back on the boat with his two beautiful doors, wherever he made them, a storm broke out, and they threw over one of the doors overboard, and they were about to throw the second one, and Nicanor put himself on the door and says, if you throw it over, throw me too, I want to die. And I invested all my investment in building these doors to the Beis Hamikdash, and that right then the storm stopped. And when they got to Shalim, they found miraculously the other door traveled with them, and they built those doors into this interesting gateway that would divide between two parts of the Beis Hamikdash. On the eastern side, on the eastern door, the entrance to the one, separating two parts of the Beis Hamikdash, and the inside the door was holy, was Kaddish. Impure person would be Karis if he would go inside there, and outside the other room, outside the door, wasn't a problem. So this door of Nicanor separated those two rooms. Shasham, and in that doorway, three things would happen. Mashkinas asaitis, they would give the saita to drink. Okay, and they would also purify, bring the sacrifice for the women that had babies that are becoming pure after their purification process. They would bring a sacrifice. And they would also purify by that doorway the Mitzrayim, the people with leprosy. Rashi explains here because they have a problem. Problem is But the verse says, for example, here it says you bring her before Hashem. You bring the Saita before Hashem. But all these people are not really in a state that they should be brought into the holies. Why not? Because first of all, this woman, we're going to undo her hair, and we're going to even make her clothes, and she's going to be in a very, not modest state when this thing takes place. So she's even going to die and bring impurity. You can't have a dead body in the holies of the Beis HaMikdash. But it says to do it before Hashem. We're supposed to bring her by the gate before Hashem. So what do? And the same problem is with the women who had the baby. They went through most of their procedure of becoming pure. They went to the mikveh. They just need to bring a korban, but there's still some little level of impurity on the woman until that sacrifice is residue of the impurity, until the sacrifice is brought. And the same thing is with the leper, that the leper needs to get blood on his thumb or his ear, wherever the leper needs to get the blood, and it has to be done in the Beis HaMikdash. But on the other hand, if God forbid these people are impure, they're not allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. So they created a little doorway. This Nicanor gate was made that it did not, the holiness of the temple beyond that door did not extend into the doorway, into the door where the Nicanor was. And the leper would, I guess, stick his thumb or whatever ear a little bit into that door space over there, which wasn't considered going into the actual holies. And the kohen would sprinkle the blood there wherever it needs to be done. The same thing was with the sacrifice of the woman who had a little bit residue of impurity left on her. And the same thing is now with this woman, but they're kind of right there by the doorway, and they're not their whole body's in, and therefore they're considered there, but they're not there fulfilling the obligation for these unique situations. So that's why they would go to that door. Okay, now what happens? The kohen eiches v'gadeha, and the kohen holds on to her clothes. Im nikro, and if they rip by the neck, like by the top of it, if the clothes rip, they rip them niframu, and if they shred, they shred. Hachumagalas liba, until he reveals her heart. So the clothes is she's standing not fully modest over there. And you undo her hair. Let out her hair, undo her hair. Not this is one of the places which you learn actually shekel, because Jewish women wear shekels to cover their hair. And this person acted immodest. This is the way it's done. Rabbi Yehuda says, I know the Torah says to do all these things, but if she's a beautiful person, that people will maybe see her, even though it's a mitzvah and it's bidong as a service, might get attracted. Then they would not allow this woman to reveal part of her body over there. Or if her hair would be beautiful by letting it out again, they would make sure not to allow the woman to be in this way. And part of this process before then, therefore, if she would get dressed in nice white clothes, she would dress in black clothes. She shouldn't be a case where they're doing this and this woman's dressed up and beautiful. And the same thing goes for if there was golden ornaments on her. The katliois, or she had a katliois, is a kind of a neck. Rashi says some kind of a neck brace that would attach. It was like a choker, like a necklace choker that would also clasp the ends of her dress together, keep the top of the dress together. Or nizamim, or nose rings, the boys, or rings on her fingers. Take them all off for in order to make her not look fancy and pretty and so on when this is taking place. And then you take a Egyptian rope. So interesting here. I believe Rashi here, when they say it's called an Egyptian rope because it's made out of a shape of a dekel tree. Mitsure dekel. There's these nettings that grow on palm trees. I think you see them in Israel. They would take that string and attach her clothes from on top of her breast in order that the Ma'ila Midada, so her clothes shouldn't fall down and reveal her whole body. It's a little bit of reveal, but not her whole body. Another opinion, actually, I heard the Zion Spring interesting. He says that you took the rope from Egypt, actually. It means a rope that was bought from Egypt, because that is the way people in Egypt we don't behave. They're immoral, they're immodest in that fashion, and that's the way this woman behaved. And even though she maybe didn't cheat, but she still did something wrong, she even hid alone in the woman with a guy. In other words, maybe she didn't sin, but she was warned not to be secluded with that husband when we know that she was secluded with the man. So even though she didn't do anything but she did something very bad. She was told not to, and she still did it. Now, something very interesting here. I heard of Zayin shares one of the reasons that they would make it so hard for her. It's because if they wouldn't, let's say a woman who didn't actually sin would go through no intimidation, nothing. Would just here drink the water. We know that the water would make people who couldn't have kids. What's stopping every person from just going ahead and doing this? So in other words, if she sinned, that's why she's good for her to be maneuvered, for her to be, disgusted. And if she didn't, we need to create a system which women will not be on purpose doing this in order to have the magical potion, save them. It's one of the commentaries I believe that Rabbi Zayin shared. So he says like this: so that's what they would do. Whoever wanted to see, Balirais came to see. Whoever wanted to see the event, the saita with the suspected adulteress together with the drink. Besides, who cannot attend are her servants and her maidservants. Because her heart is she'll become at home with them, and she won't be afraid and she won't admit. So in other words, allow all her friends and family to come along with her, servants and her maidservants. That'll keep her strong, and we want her to admit before she drinks the water. So we don't come to erase Hashem's name in there. And all the women can come and see. Now the Gemara is the Rashi says the Gemara is gonna ask, what do you mean all the women could come and see? You just said that anyone who wants could come and see, even men. Now you're saying all women could come and see. The Gemara will discuss it later on. Why do we say they should come and read the Basra? That they should come and see is so that it should be like a musar. They should be a lesson for them. Called Anashim, the women. It says kizim. So they should not do like her, unscrupulous, not good behavior, adulterous behavior. And therefore, I guess people coming and seeing, it's not a bad thing to do. We'll learn about that, I believe, later on in the Gemara. So now let's go in the Gemara here, though. The Gemara starts off with this Mishnah. From where do we know this? That it has to be in the head Supreme Court, in the main court. There's two other courts on the Temple Mount. There are 23 people. They could do capital punishment. Who said that it has to be the number one, only court that could judge and could give this woman the water to drink and take care of it? Only the Supreme Court of the Jewish people have to deal with this suspected adulteress. So Rabbi Chia, the son of Gamda, said the name of Rabbi Chanina. I know this through an inference called Gzeira Shava. Gzeira Shava, Asya, Taira. We use the term Taira in one location. That talks about specifically the head Supreme Court. And in our case, it says Taira 2, and that's used Gzeira Shava, a word comparison that just like one talks about the head court, the other one too. Let's see. It says over here, in our case of the suspected adulteress, the Saita, the Kayin does to her this whole Taira. Everything it says here, the Kayin does to her. The Kayin is the one who makes it happen. And he uses the term Taira, a unique word for that. Ksiv Hasaman over there, it says that when somebody is fighting against the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin, and tells you to go against them, it's a very serious offense. And the term there, it's referencing that someone telling you to go against the head court, which means the main bezin is where we're concerned. It says the term Taira, just like later on in the Taira, it's referencing the term Taira, the head Supreme Court. So to here, it's referencing the head Supreme Court. So very simple question, simple answer. How do we know that you have to go specifically to the head Supreme Court? And the answer is that's Gzeira Shava, and that's what we learn from one word to another, that it has to be the head Supreme Court. Then the Gemara says the next part, we intimidate her. So you see questions that Urimino, it's a contradiction. At one time you say just like we intimidate her, that she shouldn't drink, admit it, tell us that you really sinned. So do we intimidate her? That you should drink. And what do we say to her? How do we convince her that she should drink? Biti, my daughter, if you're for sure positive that you are really pure, you know for sure that nothing happened in that room with you and that guy, stand up for the truth, and your truth that you know is true, which see and drink it. Let everybody know the truth. Why? And don't be afraid. This is not a potion that kills people who don't deserve to be killed. If you know you didn't do it, go and drink it. And how do we calm her down from not being scared of this dangerous potion? Because what are the bitter waters, the Saita waters, this potion compared to Ella only l'sam yavesh, to a dry medicine or a dry poison, that's put on live flesh. What does it mean? If there is a wound, and then it goes into the wound and it does whatever the medicine needs to do. But if there's no wound, it doesn't help at all. So basically, you don't have to be afraid of the potion. Why do you not have to be afraid of the potion? The potion is only made to heal. The potion is only made to heal. You don't have to be afraid of it. It's either not going to do anything or it'll be a blessing for you. You said you didn't do anything. The potion will either be a blessing or it won't do nothing. In other words, it's not going to, it's not even discussing here. He's not even discussing here that it won't cause damage. We're taking the side already that she's saying nothing happened. So either it'll do nothing or it'll do something. If you need help, if there's a wound there, if you can't have kids, it'll make it that you could have kids. Gemara says, like kasha, it's not so now, but we're trying to bring a question. Why I don't understand. On one hand, you're saying we do everything we can. Our Mishnah just said, intimidate her, to get her not to drink. And here you're saying, just like we intimidate her not to drink, we intimidate her to drink it. The Gemara says a simple answer. Like kasha, it's not a question. Here, where we intimidate her as much as we can, so she should admit that she sinned before Hashem's name in the whole 4th chapter of the Torah there was erased into the thing. We never erased the Torah for to make this potion. But here, it was already erased. And the potion is ready to be made, was already made. Cannot give it to the drink. Megillah, and we tell her, please go ahead and drink it. I think if she still doesn't want to drink it, we won't be able to force her to drink it. But therefore, now at this point, we need to convince her that this is the right thing to do, and therefore, we want to encourage her to drink it. I just want to see, what did Rashi say over here? In other words, we're scared that if she erased it and she says, and she falsely admits, she says, I'm impure. And she really is not. But she's saying she's impure because she's scared to drink it. But she really is pure. And then she ends up drinking it. No, I'm sorry, if she doesn't drink it, now she's making herself an adulteress, which is not true. And her kids, maybe the kid she'll have, they think was born out of whatever, she really did commit adultery, but meanwhile she didn't. She's just scared to drink the water that was already made. And therefore we tell her, no, admit it, just if you didn't sin, the potion's made, we convince her to drink it and we get her to drink it. Let's go on to the Gemara. And I think this is the last piece. For now we say in front of her, second to last piece. We say in front of her, the next part of the Mishnah said, what do we say? We say things that the ear shouldn't hear. In other words, we talk about the tzaddikim as if they were really sinners. Let's see inside. And we say they sinned and you sinned. So in a minute, we'd say in front of her the stories that happened in the earliest written parts of Torah, which were the greatest tzaddikim, who came from the earliest points in history. Kigoin, like it says, Asher Chachamim Yagidu v'leichichedu ma'abaysim. Praised are the scholars who told all, and they weren't afraid to hide of their forefathers' sins. I know my father shared with me once. He says, "How do you know the Torah is true? It's because who writes a book about the history and has all these terrible things in the Tanakh about ourselves? Obviously it's true. Everyone would want to sugarcoat a story that happened about themselves." Kind of what he's saying over here. That praised are the scholars that everything was in the open, and something wrong happened, they admitted it. And that's what they tell the girl. They say, listen, don't worry, you're not the only one who cheated. Tell us what happened in that room, and you should know this happened to other great tzaddikim too. But really, as we said, it's not true. Really, the Chachamim, the oral Torah teaches us really great tzaddikim. God forbid to say on them that they cheated. But but for their sake, we read it simply so that they will encourage them to admit. Yehuda, Haida, we have the story with Yehuda, with Tamar, right? What was the story? Let's just recap quickly. That his two sons, Er and Oinon, ended up dying because they didn't want to let their seed out. Meanwhile, Yehuda sent their daughter, who was supposed to marry the levirate marriage to the third son, he sent him away. The girl saw that her father-in-law was not allowing her to marry his third son. She went and dressed up like a harlot, and Yehuda, traveling in the way, didn't know who she was and slept with her, and she became pregnant. And they told Yehuda, oh, your daughter-in-law was supposed to marry your other son's pregnant, and he was going to kill her. And she sent his Yehuda's ring, which he gave to her, and didn't tell anybody what happened. She told Yehuda, just let Yehuda know that the one who I'm pregnant from is the one who owns this ring. Yehuda admitted it. He wasn't embarrassed. And this is what you're telling the girl, this whole story. What was the end? He merited the world to come. The great tzaddik Yehuda ended up the world to come. And therefore, my dear girl admitted to it, and it will end up being good. Ruvain also, we had the story with Ruvain. He admitted and didn't sin. What was the story with Ruvain? It says that Ruvain got involved with his father's beds. What happened? What was the real story over there? That he didn't really, God forbid, sin in this way. When his mother Leah passed away, his father moved his bed when his stepmother, when the other mother, when Rachel passed away, Yaakov moved his bed to Rachel's maidservant instead of moving it to Leah's bed. And Leah's oldest son Reuven stood up for his mother's honor and moved his father's bed moved his father Yaakov's bed into his mother Leah's tent. And therefore it was you're not allowed to play with tzaddiks, where they sleep and so on. So it's considered like Yehuda was kind of involved in sin in that way. But to tell the girl, it says that he sinned, and Reuven admitted it too. What was the end of the story with Reuven? He also married to the world to come. So my dear girl, admit, and you'll merit the world to come. Then the Gemara goes on, and what was the reward of these two people, Yehuda and Reuven? The Gemara says, what do you mean maschar? Why are you asking what was their reward? To the Kamrina, we just said the reward was they got married to the world to come. So that's the reward. No, I mean, what was their reward in this world? These two great tzaddikim, to them alone was Eretz Yisrael given, and no foreigner went among them. He says, what are we talking about here? In the I think in our Navi class, in our Tanakh class, we actually had this. Well, one thing we know, Yehuda merited to be the king of the Jewish people. So here's this guy who was originally suspected for things, and he admitted it, and he ended up being the king of the Jewish people, his descendants. Now also we know that Reuven got the first one to get land on the Transjordan. Reuven got it, as we learned in our class. The reason is because Reuven admitted the sin that he did. I think we learned in the commentaries there actually that the reason they got land first was a healthy lesson for everybody else, that admitting your sin is a good thing. It was a lesson to the people as they're settling in Eretz Yisrael. And I think like Yehuda was even next to get the land, I don't remember, over there. So their reward wasn't just in the afterlife, but the world wasn't this physical world. The tribes were the first ones to get land, and they were merited to be king of the Jewish people because of their admittance. So look what happens when you admit what you did wrong. So my dear girl, admit it. The Gemara is going to question all say, so he says, wait a second. I see that Yehuda, we know, admitted. Where do we see in the Torah that Yehuda ended up admitting his wrong? It says in the pasuk, in that story where the girl who was going to be burnt for committing adultery sent the ring back and never told anyone it was Yehuda, and just said, pass this to Yehuda and ask Yehuda if he recognizes what it is. And Yehuda could have said, I don't know what it is, and she would have got killed. But Yaakov Yehuda, and it says that Yehuda recognized Vayomer Sad Kavimani, and he publicly announced that she is right. And what embarrassment it was to Yehuda that he ended up being caught, that he was the one who slept with the harlot. So we see clearly in the Torah that Yehuda ended up admitting his sin. Where do we know that Reuven, the Oidi, that he admitted it? How do we know that Reuven ended up admitting the sin that he did? I'll tell you how we know it. It says an interesting verse. It says, at the end of the Torah where it talks about the blessings that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to all the tribes. It says, Yechi Ruvain, may Ruvain live, Ba'al Yamais, and may he not die. So it talks about the first, starts off with the blessing of Yehuda, and says, may Ruvain live and not die. And then right after Yehuda, Ruvain, it says, V'zoisel Yehuda, and this is to Yehuda. The question is, what is the, why does Yehuda go after Ruvain in the blessings? Why are they two one after another? And the term V'zoisel Yehuda, and this is to Yehuda. In other words, it's finishing from Ruvain, it says about Ruvain, and this is also to Yehuda. It's connecting Yehuda to Ruvain. Why does it place Yehuda after Ruvain, and why does it say, and this also, like kind of following off Ruvain and Yehuda? What's the connection between these two siblings, one to another? And he's going to explain very interesting. All the years that the Jews were in the desert, the 40 years, they took with them the bones of the brothers. In other words, it wasn't just Yosef's bones that the Yosef couldn't leave as Melech Mitzrayim, as king of Egypt, could not leave Egypt, and they took out Yosef's casket with them, but they actually had a few caskets, a bunch of caskets going with them. All the 12 brothers, Yaakov, their father, Yosef ended up arranging that Yaakov could get out. But how did everyone else get out? But they're going to leave them behind, being buried as mummies in Egypt? No, they took them with them in the desert. So all that time that the Jews were in the desert, everyone's casket was fine, besides for Yehuda. So Yehuda, the bones of Yehuda, Megulgal and Ba'arim, were rolling around in the casket. They weren't set as a normal, the bones are in the as they're in the what do you call it, in the skull, in the framework of the how it's connected to the body. All the bones of Yehuda were rolling around. Ad Sha'aman Moshe, till Moshe Rabbeinu saw what's going on, and he stood up, and he asked mercy for Yehuda. I don't know what's going on. This guy's casket here is, the bones are rolling around. What did he do wrong? Amar lefanav b'nei shalaylam. And Moshe said to Hashem, Mi garam leRuvain shahoida. Who caused Ruvain to admit his sin? I guess in general, when people sin, they, it's hard to admit that you did something wrong. So maybe who got Ruvain to admit or even acknowledge? Maybe Ruvain didn't do anything, or maybe Ruvain just stood up for his mother's honor. Who got him to admit that he recognized what I did was wrong? It was Yehuda. Because when Ruvain saw his younger brother admit publicly that and let everybody know, I did this and it was embarrassing for me to do it. And Ruvain says, if he could admit what he did, I could also admit what I did. So Ruvain said, I also was wrong for moving my mother's beds and so on. So he goes on to say, Amar lefanav Rebbeinu Shalai. So he says, Zois Yehuda, that's what the Torah says, and this is to Yehuda. So Ruvain got to go first in Israel because Ruvain admitted, and that was a very big character of Ruvain that he admitted, but Zois Yehuda, and this is to Yehuda. So I guess that means that the credit of Ruvain admitting is something that goes really towards Yehuda, because Yehuda also was the one who admitted his sin. So when Moshe started hearing that biyad, and Moshe tells it to Hashem, why is this guy's bones jingling in the thing? Now, by the way, why did Yehuda's bones, why did he even have that punishment to begin with? And the reason is because when the brothers wanted to go get food in Egypt from Yosef, Yaakov did not want to send Binyamin, if you remember, with them to Yosef. And Yehuda stood up, and Yehuda said, over my dead body, I will take responsibility for him in this world and in the world to come. If anything happens to him, I'm going to suffer from it. First Yaakov said, why does that help me? I don't want to lose both of you. But he took responsibility. And as Rashi says here, that when a tzaddik makes a decree, whether you do fulfill your end of the deal or you don't fulfill your end of the deal, you're going to suffer from that consequence of that, making that level commitment to such a big tzaddik. It's going to affect you. So Yehuda said to Yaakov, I will not be settled, not in this world and not in the next world to come, if I don't bring Binyamin back. Even though Binyamin was brought back, he still was suffering from that same promise that he took on himself to this big tzaddik. So Moshe is now trying to defend Very interesting. Yehuda against that his bones should calm down, because look how great a tzaddik he was that he admitted his wrong, and even got Reuven to admit. And that's where we see, by the way, how did we start this? We said, where do we see that Reuven admitted what he's wrong? So we find it because the verse says, and Yehuda, we see that Reuven got Eretz Yisrael first, and it follows off saying, and he followed in the path of Yehuda. When did he follow the path of Yehuda? In admitting that what he did was wrong. Let's go on. Now, continuing the story over there, interesting story there. Biyad Shama Hashem Eskol Yehuda. It says, Hashem heard the voice of Yehuda, and his bones stopped shaking. Al Avrei L'Shafa, his bones reconnected back into the skeleton, and the bones stopped jingling around anymore. However, there was another problem. They weren't letting Yehuda go up the Mesifta de Rakia into the yeshiva and the Mesifta in heaven. Okay, good, you were brought back, but you still have a curse on you. But they're not allowing his soul to go up to the heavenly yeshiva. So Moshe says, the next part of the verse is, Ve'el Amoy Tiviyanu, please bring him to his nation. So let him into the yeshiva. Yada Mishkal Umitrach B'Shmaita. He still did not know the Mishkal Umitrach, how to argue and debate in the laws in the yeshiva. Fine, he got in, but he didn't know how to debate. Bahad did Rabbanon together with the other souls of the rabbis there. So what's the next words in that verse? Yadav Rav Loi, let his opinion be worth a lot up there. Havikasalka leishmaita liba delchasa. I'm sorry, Loi havikasalka leishmaita liba delchasa. Fine, so he was allowed to debate in the yeshiva, but they did not allow his opinion to become the halacha. His opinion never got to be the final decision there. So that's why the verse ends perfectly. The Ezim Mitzvah Tia, let him be success from his enemies, let him be successful over them. So that is we're almost done with the Gemara. That is the fascinating story that we have with the bones of Yehuda and what the verse and the blessing over there means. It's all talking about the Moshe Rabbeinu in that verse. Hashem heard the voice of Yehuda, meaning allowed the skeleton to get back together. But Lame Tiviyanu, when the verse then said, bring him back to his nations, means allowed Yehuda up to the heavenly court. Yod of Rav Loi, let his hands be successful, meaning his opinion be heard. And then let the halacha even be like him. That's how he translates that verse, is referring to Yehuda. And Yehuda follows Reuven because Reuven learned from Yehuda how to admit. Let's go on. Yehuda died. He says, no, Yehuda admitted it. He had a very strong reason to admit what he did is wrong. Tamar, he had to admit to everyone his sin so that Tamar shouldn't get burned, because Tamar was pregnant from somebody and she was still had the levirate marriage, was still promised to the third son, and she kind of committed adultery by having a kid from another person. Therefore, Yehuda would not have admitted publicly his sin, let everybody know his sin that he did, then someone would have got killed. Why should Reuven admit to everyone? Everybody should know that I was involved and make it public information that I switched my father's beds. Why is that something that's information that should be let out to the public? But Amar Rav Sheshes, didn't Rav Sheshes say, Chotzif alai, by Yisrael, the mifarit chatoi. It's a chutzpah thing for somebody to say publicly their sins. Other religions, lahavdil, have that which they tell people their sins, but that's not a Jewish thing. The only one we in Yiddishkeit Judaism tell sins to the we should say it and let it known, but it's not nice for someone to know, I guess like some of these mic drop things, it's not always the most appropriate thing to let everybody know all the terrible things you did in your life. It's between you and Hashem, and it's not public information. So the Gemara answers, why? Oh, why did he admit it? So his brother shouldn't be suspected. In other words, Yaakov came back from work and he sees his bed in the wrong tent, and he was going to maybe blame another brother that it was their fault that this terrible thing happened. In order that chas v'shalom nobody else should take the blame, Reuven ended up admitting that he was the one at fault and he's the one who moved it, and he ended up admitting, maybe eventually or later on, ended up admitting what he did in order that no one else should take the fall for the act that was done. That, my friends, is the end of this fascinating Shtickle Gemara for today. Any questions or comments on today's Gemara? I know it's pretty late.